Close your eyes for a moment and imagine the hills of Galilee 2,000 years ago. The air is warm. The breeze carries the smell of olive trees and freshly baked bread. And in the distance, you hear the sound of hammer against wood. This is the world of the carpenter, a humble yet essential figure in the daily life of ancient villages. But what exactly did a carpenter do in Galilee during the first century? What tools did he use? What kinds of jobs did he take on, and how important was he to the community? Let us drift together into this world, slowly and calmly, exploring the role of the carpenter in an age long before machines, nails by the box, or lumber yards stacked with planks. This is the story of work, skill, and survival in the land where Jesus himself grew up as the son of a carpenter. To understand the carpenter's trade, we must first step into Galilee itself. Located in the northern part of ancient Israel, Galilee was a land of hills and fertile valleys. The Sea of Galilee lay at its heart, a freshwater lake surrounded by fishing towns, farms, and small villages. The people of Galilee were mostly peasants, farmers who grew wheat, barley, olives, and grapes. Others were fishermen, shepherds, and day laborers. But among them were also artisans, skilled in crafts that required special knowledge and training. The carpenter was one of these artisans. Unlike the large urban centers such as Jerusalem or Caesarea, Galilean towns were small, often only a few hundred to a few thousand people. Nazareth, the childhood home of Jesus, may have had fewer than 500 residents. In such a small place, everyone knew the carpenter, and the carpenter knew everyone. The carpenter was not wealthy. His life was simple and often difficult. He worked with his hands, often from sunrise until sunset, to provide what people needed for their homes and farms. But he was respected for his skill. His knowledge of wood and tools made him valuable in a world where almost everything was made by hand. In Greek, the language of much of the Eastern Roman world, a carpenter was called tekton. This word is often translated simply as carpenter, but it actually carried a wider meaning. A tekton was not only someone who worked with wood, but also someone who could handle construction, stonework, and even metal in some cases. In the Bible, Joseph, the husband of Mary, is described as a tekton. So too later was Jesus. This tells us that they were not just woodworkers, but skilled craftsmen who could build and repair many things. In a rural village, this flexibility was essential. A carpenter could not survive if he only made chairs or tables. He had to be able to do whatever the community required. So, when we say carpenter, we should imagine a craftsman, a builder, a problem solver, someone who could mend a plow, repair a roof beam, construct a door, or perhaps even assist in larger building projects. What did a carpenter in ancient Galilee have at his disposal? He had no sawmill, no power tools, no nails made by machine. Instead, his tools were simple, yet effective, passed down through generations. He would have used axes and adzes for cutting and shaping wood, hand saws made of iron, with teeth filed by hand, chisels of bronze or iron, used to carve joints, wooden mallets for striking chisels, bow drills spun by hand to make holes, measuring rods and cords to ensure accuracy, and, most importantly, stone hammers for heavier tasks. Nails existed, but they were expensive, forged individually by blacksmiths. So carpenters often relied on joinery, fitting pieces of wood together using mortise and tenon joints, wooden pegs, or bindings of rope and leather. The carpenter's workshop might have been no more than a small space near his home, with tools hanging from the wall and wood stored in a corner. There was no steady supply of lumber. Instead, the carpenter used whatever wood grew locally: olive, sycamore fig, cedar imported at great cost, or acacia. Each type of wood had its own strength and character. The carpenter had to know how to work with each one, shaping it to suit the task. So what did the carpenter actually do? He built furniture: stools, low tables, benches, and storage chests. These were essential in every home, but most were simple, without decoration. He made tools for farmers: wooden plows, yokes for oxen, handles for sickles and hoes. Without these, farmers could not work their fields. He repaired roofs and beams in homes. Most houses in Galilee were made of stone and mud, but their roofs needed strong wooden beams to hold up the thatch or clay. A carpenter was called when a beam cracked or when new construction was needed. He made doors and door frames, often reinforced with metal hinges provided by a blacksmith. He also built storage containers, wooden boxes, and even simple cupboards. He may have made boats, especially in towns along the Sea of Galilee. Fishermen needed sturdy vessels to hold their nets and catch. Boat building required great skill, and some carpenters specialized in it. In short, the carpenter touched almost every part of daily life, from the table where a family ate, to the plow that tilled the soil, to the boat that brought in fish. The carpenter's hand was everywhere. The carpenter's day began early. He rose with the sun, prayed, and ate a simple meal of bread, olives, and water or wine. Then he stepped into his workshop. There, he might prepare wood by trimming branches, splitting logs, or smoothing planks. The sound of the saw filled the air, mixed with the smell of fresh shavings. His children might help by carrying scraps, fetching water, or holding cords. Customers would come by, asking for repairs or bringing payment in coins, grain, or goods. Few paid in silver, most bartered. A farmer might give a basket of figs in exchange for a repaired plow. A shepherd might offer wool for a new yoke. The carpenter's life was not glamorous, but it was steady. Every household needed him. His reputation depended on the quality of his work. If his plow broke easily or his stool collapsed, people would not return. So he labored with care, knowing that his hands shaped not just wood, but trust. Where did the carpenter stand in society? He was not among the wealthy elite, the priests, merchants, or landowners. But neither was he the poorest, like the day laborers who waited in the marketplace for a chance to work. The carpenter belonged to the artisan class, respected for his skill, but still living close to poverty. His income was never secure. Some months work was plentiful. Other times, when the harvest failed or when people could not afford repairs, he might struggle to feed his family. Still, his trade gave him dignity. Unlike slaves, he worked for himself. Unlike farmers bound to the land, he had a skill that could serve many. His role bridged the worlds of peasant and craftsman, making him both ordinary and unique. In Jewish tradition, manual labor was not despised. The rabbis often said that work with one's hands was honorable. A father was expected to teach his son a trade. Joseph, teaching Jesus carpentry, was part of this culture. Thus, the carpenter was more than just a worker. He was a symbol of honesty, hard work, and humility. His craft connected him to the rhythms of nature, to the trees, the seasons, and the needs of the village. It is no wonder that when Jesus began teaching, people remembered his trade. They called him the carpenter's son, and some even the carpenter. It was part of his identity, shaping how people saw him. But life was not easy. Tools were expensive and had to be maintained carefully. Iron rusted, wooden handles broke. The carpenter had to know how to repair his own tools. Wood itself could be scarce. Olive wood was twisted and hard to work with. Imported cedar was costly. Sometimes he had to salvage old beams or reuse scraps. The Roman tax system added further burdens. Carpenters, like farmers, were required to pay heavy taxes to both local rulers and Rome. A portion of his earnings might be taken before he could feed his family. And then there was competition. In larger towns, several carpenters might compete for work. A carpenter had to distinguish himself by skill, reliability, and fairness. Yet despite these challenges, the carpenter endured. His work was too necessary to be ignored. Picture now a day in Nazareth, around the year 10 CE. The carpenter wakes at dawn. The village is quiet. Roosters crow, and the first light touches the hills. He eats his bread and olives, then picks up his axe. Today he walks to a nearby grove where a farmer has agreed he may cut branches. He chooses carefully, selecting wood that is strong but not brittle. He carries it back, sweating under the weight. At his workshop, he sets to work. He saws, planes, and chisels. The air fills with wood dust. By midday, a farmer arrives with a broken plow. The carpenter examines it, shakes his head, and promises to repair it by tomorrow. In return, the farmer offers a small bag of grain. As the sun sets, the carpenter puts away his tools. He sits with his family, eating lentil stew and bread. His hands are rough, his body tired, but his heart is steady. He is given shape to the needs of the day. 2,000 years later, we still remember the carpenter of Galilee. Not because he was rich or powerful or famous in his time, but because his work represented the quiet strength of ordinary people. The carpenter reminds us that history is not only about kings and armies. It is also about those who shaped wood into plows, who built the tables where families ate, and who repaired the boats that carried fishermen onto the sea. In their hands was the foundation of daily life. Without them, villages could not endure. The carpenter of Galilee, humble, skilled, enduring, is a window into a world both distant and familiar. And when we picture him at work, we see not only the past, but also the timeless dignity of human labor. So, now, as you rest and close your eyes, let the sound of the carpenter's hammer fade softly in your mind. Imagine the gentle rhythm of saw against wood, the smell of olive shavings, the sight of beams lifted into place. This was the life of the carpenter in ancient Galilee, a life of work, of service, and of quiet resilience. And perhaps, in its own way, a life not so different from our own.